Welcome to the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence Book Club session number 2 for January 11th, 2017. My name is Dave Scriven-Young. I'm an attorney at Picard and Abramson in Chicago, Illinois, focusing on litigation, environmental law, and construction law from Chicago, Illinois. I just wanted to welcome everyone today. While we're waiting for some folks to join tonight, a couple of interesting things that I'm going to be doing or have done. A couple of days ago, the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division had a wellness program. Hey, Nan, how are you doing? Welcome to the book club. Good to see you. I assume you're in Bermuda, where I'm going to be in a couple of days for the ABA section of litigation. Our leadership meeting is going to be there, and I'm really looking forward to the warm weather. Tonight I'm from my home office in Naperville, where it is a little bit cold. I'm sure a lot colder than it is in Bermuda, and a lot of rain tonight as well. And so I'm sure, Nan, you're probably on the beach somewhere in Bermuda. So welcome to everyone who is joining as well. So anyway, like I was saying, we're on session 2 of the book club. And the purpose of the book club is to do a deep dive into books that are going to help us develop our emotional intelligence skills, and to specifically think about how we can begin to use those skills in our law practices. I'm here on Periscope every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for this discussion, and it really is a discussion. And I see, hopefully we have our chat working, and I think we do. And so it really is a discussion. I am not sitting here today as an expert by any means. Maybe one day we'll have a real expert on for the book club. But what I wanted this to be is a discussion. So please liberally use the box to ask questions or make comments as we go along. I'm really interested in hearing your opinions and observations, and I'm really looking forward to learning from all of you. As a reminder, to keep up with this book club, I encourage you to join our online discussion with our Facebook group at facebook.com/lawyerseq and on my Twitter account, twitter.com/ILEnviroLawBlog. So let's jump into the discussion today. Today's topic is the Law Review article in the Santa Clara Law Review, Expanding the Lawyer's Toolkit of Skills and Competencies, Synthesizing Leadership, Professionalism, Emotional Intelligence, Conflict Resolution, and Comprehensive Law by Professor Susan Daicoff, who is currently with the Arizona Summit Law School. It's sort of a huge title, but what this is going to do is really help us to have a great introduction to emotional intelligence and how we can use it in our law practices. What the article starts off talking about is the dramatic changes we've seen in the legal profession. And I think this has been written about a lot, and we talked about it the last time we had our live stream last Wednesday. But essentially the main thesis is that lawyers can really no longer rely on excellent legal analysis, advocacy, written and oral communication skills, trial skills, traditional negotiation and settlement skills, the things that we actually learn in law school, or that I learned in law school. And that's because clients have changed. They want more legal work for less cost. Clients are hiring auditors to oversee and audit their legal counsel's bills. They're using in-house counsel, paralegals, or even non-lawyers to do legal work. And the article goes on to discuss this a little bit more, and I'm just going to read a little bit more just to give people some background into what this article is talking about. You know, I assume going into our discussions that people have not necessarily read the article or the book that we're going to be discussing, so I'll be quoting liberally from the articles and books just to give people some context. And if people have questions or comments as we go along, please feel free to use the box and we can have a great discussion. So what this article begins to say is that clients began to pressure their lawyers to be more affordable, economic, efficient, and accountable. That was before the recession. And then came the recession, which created unbearable financial pressure on clients and lawyers. Seeking ways to cut legal costs, clients began to look for alternative sources of legal assistance. And then it goes on to say that David Susskind, who wrote the book The End of Lawyers, talked about a number of alternative sources that he called disruptive technologies. And that's the sort of things like do-it-yourself legal services, in-house legal research, document review and drafting, virtual delivery of legal services, outsourcing, unbundled legal services, which means limited scope representation. And for example, corporate clients might have their in-house attorneys draft pleadings and perform legal research, and then hire outside counsel only to represent the corporation in hearings and trials. And certainly, I've seen that in my own practice. I don't know if other people who are on the live stream have seen it in their practices as well. But certainly, even recently on an insurance company PI defense case that we're handling currently, our firm is dealing with auditors, and they want to see every piece of paper on the file. They want to know when look at the transcripts to see when the deposition stopped and started, so they could see if we billed correctly. So clients are really hammering down and wanting to make sure that that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're billing them correctly and that they're staying involved. And as we talked about last week during the book club discussion, millennials who are going to be clients and are currently clients, what they want is they want more involvement in their cases. They want to make sure that they know what's going on, and they want to have a voice. Whereas perhaps before, people saw their attorneys as the experts, and there was something magical about it that they didn't necessarily want to know about, and they trusted their attorneys. Well, now that's not necessarily the case because of all of this technology and things that are online. People can go online and figure a lot of this stuff out for themselves. They're going to know, potentially what their claims are, what a statute of limitations is for a certain claim, or even what they need to do for a hearing. And so they expect, or they have a certain level of knowledge that perhaps clients did not have in the past. And so really our clients have changed over time, and they're going to continue changing. The article then goes on to talk about new forms of practices that are emerging. So it's really a move away from typical courtroom litigation, mediation, and arbitration. And the reason why the article posits, and I think it's very true, is that number one, litigation is just completely out of control expensive. And sometimes things like arbitration, which certainly was meant to cut down on the costs of litigation by going to this private system, certainly folks aren't necessarily seeing a decline in costs. I remember doing an arbitration several years ago when I was with a big law firm, and it was a breach of contract case, but really it was an environmental case. It was an environmental indemnification case where we were seeking indemnification from a settlement that we had paid from a predecessor of our client who had used chemicals on property, and chemicals in an industrial park had migrated to a different area, and just a big mess essentially. But the issue was just a breach of contract case, and who was ultimately responsible. And although it was an arbitration and a one arbitrator case, it ended up being very, very expensive for our client. And we had the same sort of things occur. Perhaps we didn't have the extensive amount of discovery that maybe we would have in a regular litigation scenario. We only had one deposition, but really because a lot of the liability stuff had already been adjudicated, and a lot of it had already been done in sort of the underlying case that we were seeking indemnification from, there not necessarily much discovery that needed to get done as far as oral discovery or even paper discovery. But we went through a multiple series of motions. And then we had a multi-day arbitration that to me seemed just as onerous and expensive for the client as if we were in a normal courtroom or a normal trial scenario. So I don't know if folks online sort of have had the same um, uh, uh, thing occur with their arbitrations and mediations, but certainly it can be extremely onerous and expensive. So the article goes on to talk about that people are moving away from your traditional litigation, arbitration, and mediation. And there's a movement towards law as a healing profession, which includes things like therapeutic jurisprudence, restorative justice, collaborative law, preventative law, creative problem solving courts, transformative mediation, holistic law, and procedural justice. And these disciplines attempt to consider more than bare legal rights, and instead they focus on the party's needs, goals, emotional well-being, relationships, resources, beliefs, values, and morals. And so it takes into account much more than what your traditional legal setting or even your traditional arbitration or mediation would necessarily have. And so with that, um, you're certainly going to need different skills than lawyers currently have in a typical courtroom or mediation or arbitration setting. So, in addition to all of that, there's been an increased focus on lawyer distress and well-being. And there's been multiple studies, both I think with the ABA and other bar associations, and certainly private studies that show a relative above average incidence of depression, substance abuse, and other psychological distress among lawyers. And the question is, why are lawyers unhappy? Essentially, I think most of the times people believe, and I think it's partially true, that there's a link between, or the lack of a link, I should say, between what lawyers do on a daily basis and what their internal values are. And that goes because, think about your average, defense attorney who, may not be doing exactly what they want to do. Maybe they're doing mortgage foreclosures, or maybe they're, who knows what they're doing, but certainly maybe they're not happy doing what they're doing, and they would rather do something else that maybe they see would more benefit society. I don't know, but other studies shown in the article show a lack of skills development, and that is essentially on page 808, and it's because of the personality traits that lawyers have. The article says that studies have found that certain logical, analytical personality traits and decision-making preferences were more prevalent among lawyers and law students than among non-lawyers. And I think this is a lot of the A-type personalities that lawyers have. Some suggested that these lawyer traits contributed to an uneven development of skills among lawyers, an imbalance, or a tendency to overemphasize logic, rationality, and the economic bottom line. Consequently, lawyers at times may overlook interpersonal and emotional concerns. Thus, to be optimally effective and avoid psychological distress. Some scholars and researchers called for attorneys to identify and follow their own intrinsic values and develop their interpersonal skills and competencies. And later in the article, I think the author goes right to the heart of the matter and really discusses why some lawyers lash out and act unprofessionally. They fill in the blanks with negative behaviors. And I think, to me, this is the most important part of the article, because I think a lot of it shows a lack of education in the in law schools, and what they're not getting and what they could get if they studied emotional intelligence. So it talks about how people with these traits that become attorneys are left brain oriented. Okay, law students and recent law graduates may find themselves in professional situations that call for judgment maturity, self awareness, self control, interpersonal awareness, the ability to influence people, relationship building, teamwork, collaboration, problem solving, and strategic planning. So, all of these important things that are going on. But because law school did not explicitly train these individuals in all lawyering skills, they are apt to fill in the blanks with the kind of behavior they think the situation calls for, based on their personalities, life experiences, and stereotypes and media portrayals of lawyers. They may engage in hostility, sarcasm, anger, criticism, threats, belittling, and other hostile behavior towards opposing counsel, believing that this behavior is consistent with zealous advocacy and vigorous legal representation. These lawyers can lapse into over-identification with the client's cause and become overly emotionally invested in the success or failure of the client's case, resulting in emotions on rampage. And legal representation by Mongo, what Professor James McElhaney calls the lawyer's inner beast. They may focus on acquiring the external rewards of the profession, such as money, material possessions, and prestige, and become vulnerable to distress because they overlook or ignore the intrinsic satisfactions of the work empirically linked to lawyer well-being. And so, in other words, what the article is saying, and I think it's pretty true. Having myself practiced for several years, I think lawyers are thrown into situations that they are just certainly not prepared for. That law school just does not prepare them for. A lot of times you're going into court for the first time. In different courtroom situations, dealing with different causes of action, and you don't know. You're not trained to know what to do in those situations in law school. And so you fall back on what you think should happen. And I think a lot of the times, people watching, TV lawyers, or just thinking, well, I have to be a zealous advocate, so that means I have to be rude or mean. And so that sort of thing takes over. And so certainly when you're dealing with a stressful situation, who has really taught you what to do with it? And being in the legal profession, being in one of the most stressful professions, did law school really teach us what we need to know about being in a stressful situation or how to deal with those stressful situations? Instead, law school, I think, has really just prepared you or prepared me for just theoretical problem solving. So, given this fact pattern, you apply the law to it, and it's that simple. Well, it's really never that simple. Even if you're writing a brief, you have to deal with opposing counsel on the other side who is asking for extensions or doing things they shouldn't be doing in their response brief, and so you still have to know how to deal with opposing counsel. You have to know how to deal with your client. Have to know how to deal with the judge, and that's just something that law school certainly has not prepared us for. And so we can now transition now to what skills do we think lawyers are possibly missing? And the article does a great job, I think, of going through several studies to show what skills are right now important to the practice of law, given all of the things that have changed over time, and especially since the recent recession. What skills are crucial now to the practice of law? And what the studies have essentially shown is that emotional intelligence skills are crucial. And so what the article does is really go through a number of great skills that really needs to be done. So to summarize, the article goes on that the studies of learning skills suggest the importance of 4 categories of skills that can be divided loosely based on an emotional intelligence theory. One is intrapersonal competencies, so skills that are self-oriented. Number 2 would be interpersonal competencies that are relational. Within those 2 categories, the competencies can be broken down into 2 subcategories: awareness, values or abilities, and management, the ability to display behavior consistent with one's abilities. And finally, within each category, then the article goes on to break out those skills. And again, they're just the emotional intelligence skills that certainly we had talked about last week. And those skills are things like interpersonal skills being honesty and integrity, accountability, maturity and reliability and judgment. Things like passion, motivation, engagement, diligence, self-confidence, tolerance, patience, independence, adaptability, general mood, and stress management. So again, when you're walking into a situation that you're brand new to, into a courtroom you've never been in before with opposing counsel who may be rude to you, how do you deal with that situation internally? How do you manage your own stress and your own emotions? Then next would be interpersonal skills. So how to deal with others. So those skills would be general communication skills, such as dealing effectively with others, listening, speaking, questioning, interviewing, influencing, advocating. Skills like empathy, how to understand human behavior, how to instill others' confidence in you, how to obtain and keep clients, developing relationships, networking within the profession, marketing and self-promotion. Skills like counseling, managing and mentoring others, and inspiring others. Then other categories would include conflict resolution, things like teamwork and collaboration. So how to deal not only with how to essentially deal within your own firm and how to manage your own team to get the result that you want. And then the last 2 are problem solving and strategic planning. So the good news about this article, I think, is that it shows and it really stresses what law school can teach us, or what it should have taught us, and what it can teach us moving forward. Because the article talks a lot about how law schools can change to better prepare law students going forward. And I think the good thing that it tells us, practicing lawyers, law students, am glad to hear that they're going to be getting this sort of training going forward, or at least in some institutions, they're going to be getting this training going forward. But at this point in time, what does that do for us, who's the practicing attorney, who did not get this sort of training in law school, and instead we were just told about the law and maybe some practical skills training, how to do a trial and that sort of thing, or a deposition, but nothing about sort of how to manage your emotions, how to deal with the emotions of others. But what I think this article can really tell us, and that's helpful, is that these skills can be taught. That certainly if law professors can teach these things, then practicing lawyers can learn not only from law professors, but from other people and other resources as well. And so that's why I'm really glad that you're joining me today with this book club, because I think we're going to be able to learn a lot about how to manage our emotions, how to become more, or how to develop our emotional intelligence skills. So that's really, I think, a great background into what we're going to be doing going forward with this book club. It's really given us a great background, and I think it gives us a lot of hope to know that these skills certainly can be developed. And so what we're going to be doing next week is we're going to be starting a new book, We're going to be starting this book called The Thank You Economy by Gary Vaynerchuk. Let me just show it here. And it's what I really enjoy about this book and about this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, is um, this is a guy who has really built businesses up. He was fresh out of college. He took his family wine business and grew it from $3 million to $60 million in just 5 years. He now runs one of the world's hottest digital agencies, VaynerMedia. He also has several podcast shows and shows that are on YouTube. He has the Ask Gary Vee show. He also has an interesting show where he essentially it's called Daily V. He goes around. Someone actually videotapes him all day going to various business meetings, and he is very motivational. But I think what's very prescient about him is that he really knows how things have changed looking back into the past and going into the future. He's really big on things like social media, for example, and he's actually a big reason why, or inspiring me to start this Periscope or this live stream. Because that's what he does, and he's been very successful at it. And I wanted to give it a try, and I think it's a great way to communicate with people. And so we're going to start with chapter 1 of the Thank You Economy, where it's really going to show us where I think this law review article that we talked about today sort of gave us a broader perspective on, sort of what skills we're going to need. And now we know those skills that we're going to need are emotional intelligence skills going into the future. But this book is going to give us more of a historical context as to why we're in sort of this new age and what that means from a business point of view. And by the way, his thesis, his life thesis, I think, and what he talks about generally on his show is self-awareness and the emotional intelligence skills that he really pushes, because he believes that emotional intelligence skills are going to be important in the thank you economy, which we're in currently. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. As a reminder, to keep up with this book club, I encourage you to join the Facebook group at facebook.com/lawyerseq, and on my Twitter account, twitter.com/ILEnvirolawblog. Our next broadcast to discuss Chapter 1 of the Thank You Economy will be on Wednesday, January 18th at 7 p.m. Central. So thank you everyone for joining me. I hope everyone has a great night.